I look at movies in my spare time. I look at DVDs and Laserdiscs at home because I love movies. I have no idea how many movies I've seen, thousands of movies.
I live for discovery. I live for finding somebody, putting it all together in a new way.
If I can see 3 movies this weekend, why should I just see one? I am a junkie. If movies could kill you, I would have been dead years ago.
Alright guys, hello and welcome to my Celluloid Heart podcast. Did you guys enjoy the new, theme song there? Friend of mine, Michael, he did it, Michael Luis, and he made me that. It was funny, musicians cracked me up. So I was like, hey, do you think you could do something for a new segment on my show I'm thinking of doing? Could you make me like a theme song about Hollywood, about whatever? And he's like, oh, okay. And then I'm waiting. And then within, I would say it was 3 minutes, but whatever it was, all of a sudden he's like, here, I got this. Boom. Granted, it's on a synthesizer or whatever it is, but he was like, how about this? I'm like, holy shit, you just did that. He's like, yeah, I just made that. I was like, awesome. So anyway, so I got that. That was for the show, for those of you who are fans, who have listened to my show, or at least who follow me on Instagram, because you wouldn't have heard it on the show. A friend of mine over there at Movie Chatter, they're going to be sponsoring my show for free here soon as they send me a commercial, which is fine. Anyway, Dave over there at Movie Chatter, he was like, hey, man, your show was 2 hours and 14 minutes long. I was like, hey, man, sorry it was so long. He was like, why don't you take your movie section and make that a separate show and just do what you've been watching and then do your main show as a main show? And I said, oh, my God, that's brilliant. I think I'd have fun with that. I love podcasting, so yeah. And then I was going to put it out yesterday because another friend of mine, Brant, was like, hey, why not? Don't do it every week and then your show a week. Do it the day before your show. Promote your show, and then your show comes up. And I said, oh, yeah, that'd be good. And I started thinking about it, and I think I really want to do the watch list is what it's going to be called. That'll be the 1 week, and then the next week will be a regular show. And especially to be easier with when I get into James Bond here in Season 3 of my show. This is a season finale, Season 2 finale of my show. I sound important. So it's very exciting. I'm excited to get back into James Bond. Put up my James Bond poster behind me here. It's got all 24 Bond titles there. Posters, mini posters on a big poster. Anyway, pretty cool, right? So anyway, today's show, as you probably know, if you follow me, and I think, told about it last time, but maybe not. Anyway, the show today, as you see on your car radio or your phone or wherever you listen to podcasts, that it's the Holy Grail. Monty Python and the Holy Grail from 1975 and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade from 1989. Such a good film. I had not seen this movie for a while, and I saw it, but we'll get into that here in a minute. But first, some corrections. And I didn't go into what my show's about because I figure, hey, whenever I go to look at a new podcast, I read the little description of what the show is, and it tells me. So I don't need to tell you that I take 2 movies, put them together, spoilers, blah, 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 right? So I'm done with that. I'm changing the show. Totally changing. It's very exciting. Not totally changing, but you know what I mean. Anyway, some corrections from the last show. I want to let you guys know that I know Audition is Japanese. And this is just something that bothers me. Nobody could have caught it. But I was talking about Korean films, and I said, fucking Audition that I bought, and it's so great. So I wanted you to know that I know that it's Japanese. Anyway, it's a great movie. And I was wrong about William Castle directed The Tingler, not Nick Castle. I believe Nick Castle is the guy that plays Jason or Mike Myers. Probably Mike Myers. Anyway, Nick Castle plays Jason. Yeah, Nick Castle's a friend of John Carpenter. Anyway, and Taki Waititi was on a YouTube channel called Pizza Film School. That's what I talked about on this episode. So you'll hear me go, Talking About TD was on a YouTube channel, and I can't think of what it was. It's called Pizza Film School. They talked about him and one of the Russo brothers talk about Flash Gordon. And I fucking bought Flash Gordon just recently, $5 on iTunes. I was like, after listening to this YouTube channel, I was like, oh my God, I got to own that movie. So I do. And if there's anything I missed, please let me know or send me some recommendations of some movies you want me to talk about. And you can send any questions or comments or hate mail to mycelluloidheart@gmail.com, or you can send a voicemail still or a text to 602-688-2403. And I got a good voicemail that I'm going to be playing for the GoldenEye episode. It's pretty funny. So now we're into the newest movies that I watched. So this was going to be a separate show, and I'd be able to kind of take my time. And I'm still going to take my time because this is a season finale, and I can do whatever I want. I recorded the show with Jason last week and got it all set. So we're ready to roll as soon as I tell you what I've been watching and tell you some stories. Before I get into what I've been watching, let me tell you a story. So, treat people as you want to be treated. I'm at work, I do security. I'm a security supervisor, but here lately I've been just working shifts. It's COVID. You got to make some billable money. So I'm doing these billable hours. And there's a guy at the front desk at the hotel, and he's homeless, and he's a little drunk. He's like maybe 23 years old, and he's trying to use his credit card to rent a room. And his credit card does not have a chip in it. So the guy says, we cannot take the chip, and you don't have an ID anyway with that, a valid ID. So he says, could you please come up here? And he calls me on the phone. Could you please come up here and get this guy out of here? I said, okay. So I go up there. I said, I just walk up. I'm like, sir, sorry. And he looks at me and he goes, well, thank you. You're very nice. He goes, okay. And he turns around and he walks out, and I walk out with him. And he tells me that the old man, the front desk clerk, was rude, and that I treated him normal, and that I was polite and treated him with respect. And I said, well, you treat people how you want to be treated. So then we're outside, and then he asked me if I've heard of Heaven Sent. And I said, yes, I've heard of Heaven Sent. He said, I'm sent from heaven, and God chose me to come down here. And I'm here, and I'm just trying to rent a room. And there's all these things like I need a credit. I said, well, you still got to go by earthly laws and whatnot. You can't just do whatever you want. And he was like, well, thank you. God bless you. You're blessed. He goes, that guy, I don't know what will happen to him, but thank you very much. I go, well, you need an ID. And because he goes, I just want to rent a room. I said, well, you need an ID. Well, my body is my ID. Well, I'm sorry, but that won't work. Anyway, it was just funny. It struck me as comical, but also as just the way the world is now. Just treat people the way you want to. I got people that other workers of mine, they're hostile with somebody. They're yelling at them. What the fuck are you doing over there? Get out of there. It's a homeless guy looking for some place to sleep. Granted, that's our job to say, hey, man, you can't be there. But that's how you can say it. Hey, man, sorry, can't be there. You can go anywhere else, but I do security here. This is my job right here on this building. Okay. There are some jobs that you do need to be hostile with and things, but not our kind of job that I work for. Anyway, that was that little side note. So anyway, what have I watched? Hey, Philip, what have you been watching? Oh, let me tell you what I've been watching. Oh, okay, please do. Okay, I've been watching The Old Guard from 2020. I know everybody's like, yeah, we've heard of that already. It was really good. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Me and the wife watched it. She might have fell asleep. She was kind of into it, but it was a little too crazy with the, where they were superhuman. But I really liked how, I like the one part on there where she's like, the guy goes, you want to do it like, I may get the words wrong, but the gist of it was, do you want to do it like Paris in 43? Or you want to do it like Milan in 56? And she goes, Milan in 56. And the new girl, who's supposed to be us as the audience, she goes, what happened in Milan in 1956? They're like, no, 1856. And you're like, yes, fucking badass. and then they go in, ba-da-ba-da. Anyway, then I saw The Night Clerk. I had heard these movie chatter talked about it, and I was already going to see it. It looked really good, and Ty Sheridan's in it, and he's always good, and it's a really good movie. It was like really, really neat. It was really, it's like a noir, but not, but it's like a suspense. It's on Netflix, and so is The Old Guard. Definitely check it out. Now, here's one where I'll lose everybody. Everybody will fall asleep as soon as I say that I saw a documentary called California Typewriter from 2016. So there's a shop called California Typewriter in LA, and they sell typewriters. They sell old antique typewriters. They sell, the newest typewriter. And there's an old man in there who fixes them. This old black man and his guy that he hired to help him, and they just fix typewriters. And they sell typewriters. And they go out to buy new typewriters at flea markets and then flip them for a profit. And it really made me want to get a fucking typewriter and just write on a typewriter. Tom Hanks is on there. He collects typewriters. He was talking all about certain cool typewriters, what the best one is, what he uses, all this stuff. It was really neat. But then I looked up typewriter, and I'm like, $150 for a typewriter from Amazon? No, thanks. Then I saw Guns Akimbo. Movie Chatter talked about this. I had already seen it. And it was a movie where I just had playing while I was on my phone. I'm looking at Instagram. I'm eating food. I'm doing whatever. Wasn't really focused on it. You don't really have to be. It was okay. It was fun. But I thought it would be a little more, So anyway. Then here's what I love doing. I love, for one, that I saw those movies I had never seen before that I just named. And that's always cool. You find a new movie, some that just jump out at you that you're like, wow, that was really cool. And there's some that have been out for a while, like you heard on the last show, where I finally saw Black Moon Rising, which was really good. I was really surprised by it. And so was Brant. Brant was like, you're watching that? And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, that was really good for a 1986 movie. So I had always heard of this movie that everybody who grew up like my age or had cable, I wasn't really rich. We didn't have cable. We paid for the pay-per-view fights, Tyson fights and stuff, but didn't really have cable. And so Blind Fury was always on cable with Rutger Hauer. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, I grew up with that movie. It's such a cool movie. I thought it came out a little earlier than 89, but it came out in 1989. And I was like, and I watched it because I was like, everybody's seen this movie. I've never seen it. Granted, it's a little silly. They got some humor in there, but it was really cool. I really like it. I could see why people would dig it. Like, I'm 18 years old, and if I did watch that movie right then, I would have been like, yeah, I like it. Although I might have been like, come on, this guy's blind. What do you mean? He didn't think that was a dog. That was an alligator. Anyway, or a crocodile. I still don't know. I know one has flat head, one doesn't. Anyway. Then I saw, so I'm onto this, I was redoing my room, put up all my posters, and a lot of my old posters, except for my Road Warrior one that's, it's got it's like Indian from India or something. It's a reprint, of course. Got it at Comic-Con. And I was like showing Joe Merle my Alfred Hitchcock collection of like 15 movies that came in this one set. And in there, it's got blueprints for the Psycho House. It's got, how the camera moved through it. It's got storyboards of the shower scene. And he was like, dude, why don't you have that framed? Like, you need to frame that stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah. I go, yeah, it's a good idea. So I'm going to frame that. I haven't framed it yet. But in there was little 3x5 little mini posters. And so I took those and I put them around the James Bond poster that I talked about earlier. And so I was looking at those and I'm like, I should buy, again, on iTunes, they got some movies for $5 that are great, like Asphalt Jungle's $5 that I talked about last week. They have a movie called The Wrong Man by, this is what I'm getting at, Alfred Hitchcock. And I was like, I don't have that. Should I wait and buy it for $18? And this is what me and Jason talk about on the show. Or should I buy it for $5? For digital, no special features, just the movie. So I'm kind of torn. Sometimes you get those digital movies, like the new ones. You buy them and they got all the making of and all the stuff on them. So sometimes, though, you get them and they got nothing. Anyway, but I watched Sabotage from 1936. And if you have not seen this movie is so great. It involves film. It's this projectionist. Well, it's this woman and her husband who own a theater. And her son is like young. He's like maybe 10 or 12. And, but the one guy is a saboteur for, the Nazis or for whoever the bad guy was. 36. I'm thinking still it was not. It's just a spy. Some spies in our midst. And there's a scene, I'm not giving it away because it's kind of well-known knowledge. There's a scene where the guy gives the kid, the bad guy, gives the kid, which is his basically stepson, gives him the film and says, go transport this and give this to so-and-so. And what's in the film canisters is a bomb. And he's saying, take it to Jimmy, and then Jimmy is going to go set it somewhere and it's going to blow up and, there'll be mass panic and, sabotage. Hence the title. And so he sends him on the bus, and he's going, and the kid gets slowed down at, like, he's watching a parade and he's watching some other things. And he's got to be there by 1:45, before 1:45. And it hits 1:45, and that bus explodes. And you're like, holy shit, that kid just died. And it's like, holy shit. And Alfred Hitchcock would regret this later because he was like, I should have never killed the kid. I should have, you built up that suspense and then you kill the kid. Like, you never, one of the unwritten rules, that, not Fellini, the Francois Truffaut was telling him that, yeah, you never kill kids in movies, because then that's bad. Anyway, but it's really good. Sabotage, I found it on, damn it, I had all this written down. Oh, that was on Turner Classic Movies, I believe. And then I saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail from 1975. And that one is on Netflix. And that's one that's just good. But now here's the thing me and Jason talked about. Like, it's goofy and weird, and it takes a certain brain, takes a certain humor to watch that. Some people may not like Monty Python. I know girls who don't like Monty Python. And Mel Brooks, I don't think any girl likes Mel Brooks either. I have no idea. But anyway, but Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's on Netflix. We talk about it, so I don't need to say anything here. Then after that, on Netflix, I have it on Blu-ray, but I went ahead and just put on Netflix, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989. I explained to it on the show, but I haven't watched this movie very much, and I used to watch it a lot back in the early 90s, so it's very cool to watch again. Then this was really fun. It's called Fierce City, New York versus the Mafia from 2020. It's on Netflix. It's this really good, really well-filmed documentary, and like the shots, like they make the 70s look really like silvery and cool, and it just shows how, Giuliani was up and coming, and he was going against the mafia, and they were trying to do RICO on everybody, so they realized that they could get the whole bunch by doing RICO. And it's really cool. It's like 3 parts, goes by pretty quick, and it's really interesting. I wish, though, that they would have went a little further and talked about, like, John Gotti and went into that kind of stuff. Like, what they went down for was, like, not kind of racketeering, but kind of, it wasn't part of that because they went down later. So that was interesting. Anyway, then I saw a stand-up special by Patton Oswalt called I Love Everything, from 2020 on Netflix. I was on this Netflix roll that night. It was really good. It was really cool. It was funny. And I like Patton Oswalt. Some people I noticed with my cousin, you can't really tell people like, hey, watch that comedy special. Watch that stand-up comedian. Because, like I told my cousin, like, watch this certain stand-up comedian. My cousin was like, I didn't like the guy. He wasn't, I think it was John Mulaney. He was like, I don't like him. And I'm like, oh. And then my cousin's like, but I did watch so-and-so, Jim Gaffigan, and I like that. And I was like, oh, okay. So, certain kinds of humor. Anyway, if you like Patton Oswalt and you like his kind of humor, you'll like that documentary called I Love Everything. Then Jason, who was on my show, of course, that I've been talking about, Popcorn Promises podcast, he had done a show about Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And I was like, fuck, I need to buy that movie. Like, that's a great movie. It's an animated movie from 1993. Batman, the animated series was at the theater. I mean, on TV, I believe already. And then Batman Mask of the Phantasm came on. And came out at the theater. And it was like, oh, wow. And it's just really good. It reminds me of the Max Fleischer. That's what they were going for. The Max Fleischer Superman, those old cartoons, which I fucking love. There's this one where Superman stops a plane and then he has to push back while he's falling, while he's flying backwards, holding the plane as it's going down. And he pushes backwards and it goes whoop, whoop, and it moves back up. And then when he lands on the ground, he has to like bend his legs to catch it and then lay it down. And what was cool on Superman Returns was that he did that, where he stopped the plane. He didn't like push it, but when he hit the ground, that whole plane crumpled because it was going so fast when he stopped it, and that front end crumpled, and that was like so cool. But anyway, Mask of the Phantasm is like, if you saw the old Max Fleischer Superman cartoons, it's like that. It's really good. It's on Netflix. Definitely check it out. Very fucking cool. Even if you don't like Batman or you don't know who Batman is, this kind of explains who Batman is. And Mask of the Phantasm. Phantasm is the bad person in the movie. Very cool. Then I saw Comedian from 2002 because I love Jerry Seinfeld. I love his comedy. I love his personality of like not giving a shit really, and like he's never worked a day in his life at any real job. All he's done is comedy, and he made all his money on Seinfeld, and so now he can just be like, that's stupid, this is, whatever. Anyway, very cool. So Comedian was done in 2002. Like, his show had ended, and it was following him trying to get back in the rhythm of doing stand-up comedy. And he got rid of all his old jokes, and he was doing all new jokes. And so it goes with him while he's on the road, and he's putting together all this material to work out for an hour, to do an hour show or an hour and a half. And so the thing's more a documentary. It's not a comedy special. It's more of a documentary with comedy in it. And then there's a guy on there called Ori Adams. That's his name, Orey. And he's real fucking cocky. There's people, like we've said, if you're cocky, if you're fucking James Cameron, or you're who's the guy? Stanley Kubrick. James Cameron, Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg. You can be like, no, I'm telling you because I know this will work. That won't. I know that I'm good. I know that I have a bunch of Oscars. I know that I make good films. So leave me alone and shut up. And this guy was like, oh, I record myself when I do my shows. I record a video, and then I see what I like about it. And I've been doing this for 8 years. I'm really struggling. I'm really trying to get it. And he's just really fucking cocky, and he hated everybody. He would be happy for a second and then just sad again. And he's trying to talk to Jerry Seinfeld about, like, what do I need to do? Don't you worry about what people think? And this is one of those things I was telling you where Seinfeld's like, you care about what your parents think about you now. Like, you're 25 years old or 30. You're worried about what your parents think about you. Like, who cares? Like, are you having fun up there? Then do it. Anyway, very cool. But yeah, if you're into Seinfeld, check it out because it was pretty funny and interesting. And they have like Chris Rock on there and stuff. Anyway, then I saw Mark of the Vampire from 1935. This was on Turner Classic Movies. And I was like, oh, I haven't heard of this. And I saw the name Todd Browning. And I'm like, oh, shit, I got to get this movie. I got to watch this movie. I love Todd Browning. He did Freaks. And almost fucking ruined his career. Me and Joe Merle talked about it on the last show. And this Mark of the Vampire had Bela Lugosi in it. And it has Lionel Barrymore in it. And Lionel Barrymore is basically kind of like the I'm drawing blanks on things. The vampire killer, he's like, everybody's yelling at me right now. I hear you. I'll come up with it later. Van Helsing. He's like the Van Helsing of this, but he's not Van Helsing, but he's a guy who can figure out what's wrong. So this town is really worried about vampires. They're like, we got all these vampires. What are we going to do? And a lot of people are like, whatever. What are you talking about? There's no vampires. So he goes there to investigate. And the movie, I don't want to tell you, but there's a little twist at the end that's so fucking genius that I loved. It was just, it's so cool. Anyway, check it out if you can. It might still be on Turner Classic Movies, but I don't know because they circulate their stuff through. And when I get to the end of my list here, I'll tell you that I only had 3 days to watch it. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to watch it. Anyway, so then I listened to a podcast called Pure Cinema. And it's basically the New Beverly that Quentin Tarantino owns. They do a podcast. And they usually on their podcast will talk about their sorry, I gotta get comfortable. Okay. They'll talk about their calendar, like what's coming up, for the calendar month. And they play double features all month. And they'll be like, here's what we're playing. And so they had a really good show. If you want to dive into like 1969 and movies that might go with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, listen to their episode where Quentin Tarantino was on, and they talk all about the month of June or July or August when they were playing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and they played all these 1969 movies. And I was like, damn. So me and Colleen, we're going to go to L.A. as soon as they open that theater again and check out some good stuff. So anyway, probably stay the weekend, watch a couple of good films. And they play on film and all this great stuff. But anyway, they were talking about, they were going through Paul, why am I drawing blank? See, I can't write everything down. I'm going off the top of my head. Paul Thomas Anderson, they were talking about all of his movies from Hard 8. They went all the way up to Phantom Thread. And then they were like, what movies? It's two guys. One of the guys that kind of helps with the programming there. Quentin does most of the programming, but this guy kind of helps. But also this guy's a film lover, knows films. The other guy does too. And they said what films would go with, say, Hard 8. And then they'd put two films together with Hard 8. And then what films go with Boogie Nights? Well, Boogie Nights would be this and this, and all this stuff. So they talked about a movie called Heat from 1986 that they put with, it's a Burt Reynolds movie, that they put with Hard 8 because Hard 8 takes place in Vegas. And they were like, this would be cool to put with that because they're in Vegas and there's a gambling element to it. It's really cool. So I looked up Heat and I found it on Peacock TV, which is free. You can't get it like on my Roku. It doesn't carry Peacock yet. They're dealing with whatever they're dealing with, trying to figure it out. But my LG TV, I can get Peacock on there. I can get the app on there. Anyway, so I got on there or on my phone or my iPad. So I found it there. So I watched it the other day. It's got these really cool titles, like neon titles, like just really cool. It's really cool because I kind of thought like Stick and I can't think of the other one, Sharky's Machine. Like those two are kind of the same. And so you kind of are like, oh, I don't know which one's which. Stick or Sharky's Machine is whatever. Sharky's Machine's where the guy, if you push real hard, you land in the pool. Very cool. I got to watch that. Anyway, but Heat is this movie. I thought maybe I'll have seen it. I did not see it. It was great. It was one of the best ones in this grouping because it was just it almost blew me away, but not. It was a thing of it's one movie. Like I think it starts out with this girl. She just got beat up and dumped on the side of the road out of a limo. And so you're like, what the fuck? And she's all bloody and she walks to the hospital and they help her. And then the next thing you see is now you see Burt Reynolds at a bar And this guy comes in. This girl's there waiting for her boyfriend. And Burt Reynolds walks over and starts talking to this girl. And she's like, okay, sir, yeah, my boyfriend's coming, like, whatever. And he's like, hey, our code word will be this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, whatever, sir, like, go ahead and leave. And he goes back over to the bar. And then her boyfriend shows up. And her boyfriend's wearing, like, a wig. And, he's balding, so he wears a wig. And Burt Reynolds goes over and tells her this word. And he said, remember, that was our special word. And she's like, sir, I can't, honey, can you do something? And her boyfriend's like, sir, you need to step back and go away. And then he's like, no, I don't. Like, we had this special thing. And now they go to leave. And the girlfriend's like, let's just go. They go to leave. Burt Reynolds comes outside. And he's like, you want to start some shit? Blah, blah, blah. I'll give you one right here. All this stuff. And come to find out, I hope I'm not running it, but I can't help it. Come to find out, well, you probably led up to it. It's an 80s movie that this would happen. The guy, later on, after the guy, he punches a guy, throws a guy on the hood. The guy jumps up, hits him, punches him, kicks him, gets in the car, and him and the girl drive away. And so then later, and then he proposes to her. She accepts. The next day, Burt Reynolds drinking coffee at the restaurant, and here comes that same guy, sits down and says, oh my God, man, thank you. It worked so well. He's like, thank you very much. She said yes, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, here's the $500 we agreed on. And he's like, no, give me $7. And he's like, no, I'm kidding. 5 is good. And the whole thing is Burt Reynolds is saving, I don't mean to spend time on this, but hey, I fucking loved it. Burt Reynolds is trying to save up $100,000 so he can move to Venice, Italy, and he figures for $20,000 a year he could live there, and he'll live there for 5 years. But that's his thing. He's only thought that far. He hasn't thought any further. Then then he's doing that. He's trying to save up money. But while he's doing that, the girl that got beat up in the beginning calls him over. He shows up. She's all beat up. She's like, I want this guy's, like, balls in my hand. Like, I'm pissed. And he's like, whatever. And he plays it off. And he's like, you're just, you were a little kid when I met you. Like, this little girl that was hanging out. Like, just go and do something else. Like, you shouldn't have been hooking. You shouldn't have been doing this. And then she's like, well, I need you to find out who this guy is. And she explains, like, what happened. It's pretty brutal. It put a gun in her and made it go click. Then all of a sudden, like, Burt Reynolds shows up there and he starts asking, who's this guy? And then the girl, he's still telling the girl, I didn't find out anything. She's like, you're lying. And then finally he ends up like, so you're like, oh, this is what the movie is. The movie's going to be him going after this guy. Then it takes a turn because then he's got some money and he goes to gamble it. And now he's on a streak. But plus the bad guys are looking for him like, oh, it's so good. He goes in with the girl to get the guy's balls. Oh, it's just great. It was 1986. I loved it. Burt Reynolds was looking a little older at this time, which is weird because it was only 86. But something happened with him. I never knew if he got sick or what. But I remember all of a sudden when he got real gaunt and weird looking, it was like, what happened? Like, anyway. When he got divorced from Lonnie Anderson and all that stuff. Wow, there's a name I remembered. So that's a good movie. So check it out. It's on Peacock. It's free. If you just download the app, you don't have to do anything. You sign in with your provider or whatever. Then I saw a movie called Missing Witness from 1937. This was on Turner Classic Movies. I love these 30s and 40s movies. It's from 37, if I didn't say that. And it was about the mob is running this place, is running this town. And they go in right away in the beginning and into this store. And they tell the guy, you need to pay us. And the guy's like, it's been a slow week. Like, I can't pay you. I don't have the money. And they start breaking his, breaking the glass cabinets and breaking shit. And they're like, you'll pay us now. And and then this guy comes in this cop comes in and goes, "Hey, what's going on?" And they all run out. And he's like, "Hey, will you testify?" And the shop owner goes, "Yes, I'll testify. I swear I'll testify." And then it cuts to they're in court, and he's getting ready to testify, and they're all giving him mean looks, all three of the mob guys. And he's like, No, I don't know who it was. They ran out. These guys were just there. They tried to fight them off, but those guys left. And so then they're like, fuck, we need some kind of evidence. And so they're looking for these witnesses. Then they have this one witness, but then she goes disappearing. And it's like really cool. It's 37, but it's fun where it's like, okay, well, this guy's dead because, we found this body with his clothes on. We couldn't identify him, but this is what it was. And it's like, oh my God, so good. And then to finish it off, I saw It Happened One Night, 1934. So I'm going through Turner Classic Movies the other day. I'm like, what can I watch before I start doing my podcast? Got to finish my list, whatever, for the show. And so I'm like, and I find Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and I've never seen it. And I was like, I should watch this right now because that'll be good. That'll knock it off my list. Every time I see it, I go, I know I need to watch it. I love Jane Russell. I love Marilyn Monroe. I should see it. And then I was like, oh, wait, what's on my watch list? On Turner Classic Movies has a watch list. And I click on it, and it has It Happened One Night that I saved there. And it says you have 3 nights to watch, 3 days to watch It Happened One Night. And I said, well, I better watch it now because I don't think I'll be able to watch it. If I watch an hour and a half of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, it'll be a couple days, and It Happened One Night will be gone. So anyway, and I'd seen it before, and I watched it, and that movie is so good. And me and Jason talk about it on the show where there's some actors who I think they got along, like Claudette Colbert and Clark Gable. They got along, but they were both contracted with other companies. And because they did something wrong or whatever, those companies said, go to Warner Brothers and make this movie. You have to. And so they were like, okay. So Clark Gable, they both give great performances. The movie's great. It's a good little, solid little movie. And it's like an hour and 45 minutes. And then what ends up happening, that's funny, because the two studios are like, you did bad. We're sending you away. And then they do. And then all of a sudden the movie wins like the big 5, like Best Picture, Best Screenwriter, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, like wins all the main things. And nothing since 1934 had won all of those until One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1976. Well, anyway, I may be wrong with that, but I'm not wrong with that. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was the next movie that won actor, actress, director, writer, Best Picture. And then after that, it wasn't until Silence of the Lambs, as I trip over my words, that won all of those. So it's very cool, very awesome. I loved it. I had a good time. And I've had a good time on the show. So I hope you all have had as well. I really wish you guys would call in. Let me know what you think. Write me on Instagram. Leave a message on that phone number. Whatever you want to do. It would be great. And then also I'm going to play some trailers here for the 2 movies that are coming up because, it's supposed to be like a teaser. But I found these 2 trailers that they're really funny. Monty Python's always good. And Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And because I'm not going to talk to you at the end of the show, but at the end of the show, I'm also going to put on a thing here for Popcorn Promises because we forgot to have him push his show. So I'm going to do that right now here in a little bit after the 2 trailers or before. Anyway, whatever. Then next time on August 12th is we're back at Bond. GoldenEye. So, Tina Turner and, you count your weakness. One of the best songs. Like I said, I didn't want to give it away, but Live and Let Die, number 1, I think. Number 2 might be GoldenEye. And me, I know people hate it, but I love that fucking Madonna Die Another Day song. I love the little, the dancing, the little, so cool. Anyway, but we'll get to that when we get to Die Another Day, which is a horrible movie. But we'll get to that. But next coming up is GoldenEye. But right now is The Holy Grail, Monty Python and the Holy Grail from 1975, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade from 1989. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you on Season 3. You'll see me? You'll see me, Philip? Really? Okay, I'll talk to you on Season 3, Episode 1, GoldenEye. All right, thank you.
The following announcement contains certain serious inaccuracies. We apologize for these and hope they will not spoil your enjoyment of the announcement.
Thrill to the music of Burt Bacharach.
See Mark Spitz in his first all-comedy swimming role.
See H.R. Haldeman as Biffo the Wonder Dog.
And Paul Newman and Robert Redford together again as the back legs of Bette Midler.
Yes, they're all in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
We apologize again for those inaccuracies. Here's a very special announcement concerning the film Monty Python and the Holy Grail. For the first time ever on American radio, a personal message from the Queen of England.
Well, hello, sailors. You know, ruling can be great fun, but just sometimes you want to slip out of your crown, take your ermine truss off, and have a good giggly poos. And there's nothing better, particularly my fancy, than getting an eyeful of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You know, it's bigger than me in England.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
On Wednesday, May 24th, Paramount Pictures invites you to have the adventure of your life.
Dad! Dad!
Keeping Up with the Joneses.
Are you crazy? Don't go between them! Go between them! Are you crazy?
Harrison Ford. Sean Connery.
You call this archaeology?
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Rated PG-13. Starts Wednesday, May 24th at theaters everywhere.
Hey, everybody, if you want to check out my podcast, go on over to the Popcorn Promises podcast. You can download it anywhere where you can get Phil's My Cellular Heart podcast. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram, so check us out. Popcorn Promises podcast. There I was, balls deep in this dude, and all of a sudden he turns around to me and he says, "Where's the cheese on my sandwich?"
Oh, that's great. So here we are on, we're doing this Holy Grail. So you had said, so back in the day, we did Raiders of the Lost Ark on your episode.
Yes.
And which I was very pissed at because I wanted to do Raiders on mine. But I was like, all right. We did a really good episode. Everybody go to Popcorn Promises. Check that out. I'm here with Jason, but I'm sure I already explained that in the beginning of this. And then we did Temple of Doom on my episode. And now we're doing Last Crusade. And maybe we'll do on your show or however we want to do it. We'll do Crystal Skull because you and I
Don't
said...
try to push Crystal Skull off on my show.
I'm trying, but you and I said it's not that bad. It's bad, but not that bad. But no, we should do like Flash Gordon or something. I was watching this Taki Waititi talking to the Russo brothers about like Flash Gordon, like why they love it and all the story beats and everything in it. It's very cool. It's on YouTube. My wife comes home and I'm watching a Blu-ray, like this guy that goes out and shops for Blu-rays that come out on Tuesdays. So he goes to Target and he goes to Walmart. She shows up and she's like, seriously? Like you watch movies like all the time, but now I get home and you're watching a video of a guy buying movies. Like what is this? And I'm like, no,
porn.
I just want to see if there's a special super duper like cool edition or whatever. So, because I'm trying to get back into that. We'll talk about this for a second. You do not like digital media, right?
What?
You're more into physical media.
Oh, yes. I'd rather own the piece. For instance, I just purchased The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which should make you really happy because it's old as shit and it's black and white, and I bought it on Blu-ray.
Cool. Wow. Awesome. Yeah, I have the Blu-ray set. of like all 30 or 31 of the Universal Monster movies.
Yeah.
And it's very cool because it has all those, all the Invisible Mans, but I'm torn because I love the physical media, except when my dog chewed up.
That motherfucker, he chewed up your Desperado.
Yep, my El Mariachi Desperado, the corner of it. So
Man,
I gotta put
you just got that too.
Yep, I gotta put in a new Blu-ray case.
And you gotta get a new dog.
And yeah, he's dead. And so I love that, but then I'm going to iTunes and I love Hitchcock, so I have this big Hitchcock collection of not his cock, Hitchcock.
Oh,
and I knew you were like, I like his cock.
I know
too,
about your big cock collection.
Yeah. Wasn't it you bent over when I'm asking for cheese sandwich? And so I have like 15 movies on a Hitchcock thing, and then I have like North by Northwest, stuff like that. So on there, they're $5 on iTunes for like Strangers on Train, Dial M for Murder. So they're $5 each, and I'm like, well, I should get them. But then also they don't have any special features with them.
Right, that's my problem.
But then I look on the Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray is like $18, and it's got some special features. But now you're like, do I pay $5, get it digitally, no special features, or do I do $17, have
I'm
a
telling you, man,
copy?
I feel your pain. This is exactly what I went through with Creature from the Black Lagoon, because I'm like, I want to see it. I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
It's old as fuck, and I don't know, like, I'm not always an old as fuck kind of guy when it comes to movies, so I was really worried about it. But then the Blu-ray had the 2D and the 3D version of it, and I was like, all right, that's the selling point right there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much was that?
$15 on Amazon.
That's not bad.
No, I got it the next day.
And what made you, if you didn't like it, I mean, if you've never seen it, my dogs will shut up any minute now. I just leave them when my wife's gone to work. I leave them, there we go, in the living room by themselves, except for the little baby. Anyway, baby dog. What made you just go, I want to see Black Lagoon? Like, if you've never seen it before.
It was really weird how I came to it. I was actually watching that new documentary, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, about the Golden State Killer.
Oh no, I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
So they just put this on it's on Hulu, and it's about Michelle McNamara's book. I don't know if you know, Michelle McNamara is Patton Oswalt's wife.
Ex-wife, yeah.
Yeah. So she just passed away. Yeah. So anyway, that shows a lot about like their relationship and stuff. And they bonded on like their first date. They were totally different people, but it turned out that was their favorite movie. So they were showing that, but they were also relating it to this killer who like was lurking underneath, and like raping and murdering all these women. And so they kept showing images from the Creature from the Black Lagoon. And I was like, holy shit, like a dude had to get in a suit and fucking hold his breath underwater to film those sequences.
Yeah. That's
amazing. So I was like, I want to see that. And I wanted to get it on Blu-ray because I wanted the special features to see how the fuck they made it. And it's pretty crazy. They just put a guy in a rubber suit and was like, hold your fucking breath for 4 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, no, that I haven't watched those special features yet, but no, that's cool. No, Patton Oswalt is like a big film guy. He was on the New Beverly podcast talking about, how he came to love films and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that's interesting, especially for an old movie where you're like, fuck old movies. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But will we ever hear it on your podcast? I doubt it, because all your people will be like, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
All your co-hosts will be like, no, can't we watch something else?
Yeah, because the only people that listen to my podcast are the co-hosts. So.
And they'll be like, wait, I got to pay for it? Wait, isn't it streaming somewhere? So, no. But anyway, we're here to talk about the Holy Grail. I would love to talk about movies all night, but you have things to do. So you said, I did Life of Brian on Popcorn Promises.
I
and
did.
You said, my numbers increased a little bit. Everybody loves Monty Python. We should do Monty Python on yours. I said, okay. You said, how about Holy Grail and Last Crusade? I said, oh, my God, it's genius. Everybody I told was like, it's genius. I go, it's Jason did it. He's a genius. And so did you watch any since, like, so I watched Holy Grail, and then I watched, like, one episode of their show, like the first episode that's on Netflix. Oh, I was like, where'd she go? Butters! Oh, my God. Anyway.
Your dog's name is Butters?
Buttercup, yeah. My wife named her. So did you watch any of the episodes of Monty Python on Netflix?
I recently did because, as you know, my co-host Brian Gunn is a huge Monty Python fan. So he was like, dude, you're going to fucking love this. You got to watch this. And I got to say, man, like, I like Holy Grail. I liked Life of Brian. But it's still just, it doesn't feel like it's for me.
Yeah. Well, it's odd because they're doing stuff totally outside the box.
Right.
That also is kind of time. It's a little bit of England. It's a little bit of the time. So that you're like, it's almost like if you ever watched the first Saturday Night Live that they did, it starts out with like this guy in a psychiatrist's office, and it's John Belushi talking to somebody, and it's real existential a little bit. It's just weird and like odd, and it just makes you go, what am I watching,
Right.
But it's those things like even talking about that, which they probably got also because everybody is a Monty Python fan, is there's a thing on Saturday Night Live, they're doing a B sketch, and the camera's starting to move down, and so they all start moving down because the camera's like falling down, and it's just weird stuff like that. But yeah, I watched that first episode, and I was like, part of me was like, I was like you a little bit. I'm like, how much do I have to go? And I'm hitting pause, and I'm going, oh my God, I still got 20 minutes, and I watched it, and it was all good stuff, but it was also a lot of weirdness,
Right.
But that's what's great, that these guys get together and just did this.
They threw
weird
everything
shit
at the wall just to see what would stick.
Yeah.
And for that, like, I give them all the respect in the world. And then they've, influenced like so many of my favorite people.
Yeah.
But I do have a hard time like sitting down and like watching Flying Circus and enjoying it,
Yeah. Yeah.
When Brian Gunn is holding a pistol to my head, it's a whole lot easier to be like, I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what you need to do, not a little inside baseball, but not inside baseball. Anyway, what you need to do is tell them that you hate it, and then get that dichotomy. You might remember that from another episode that was pretty good. Get something like that going, then you'll really be pissed. Oh, so funny. You have some great ideas on your show. Anyway, everybody listen to Popcorn Promises. I don't want to give anything away, but my friend Joe was so pissed. Like, how can he not like Batman, The Dark Knight? What the fuck?
Yeah. I almost got choked over that, though.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be careful how far you take it with people. People are real pent up these days.
Yeah, well, that's a little Dax Shepard, punked type thing.
Right.
Where you just got to go all in, and you're like, no, I'm not backing down. Like, I got to say, I'm saying what I want to say. And then at the end, you go, no, I love that movie. And he's like, you fucker. But anyway, Monty Python, The Holy Grail from 1975. And I remember growing up on the show, like, it would be on PBS.
Right.
And you'd catch it, and so all that is nostalgic of like seeing the themes and all that, the titles and everything. But but I more was like Benny Hill. Like Benny Hill was just craziness,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of like English humor, I like didn't get as a kid, and I just was like, I don't get it. And then Monty Python didn't come on my radar until like high school. And it was like, I used to hang with all the stoner kids.
Yeah.
And all the stoner kids were watching Monty Python, and that was like their favorite. And they were listening to fucking Pink Floyd and shit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm not part of this. Like,
yeah. I don't get it.
I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But I had to watch the shit so that I could at least like have something to talk about.
Yeah.
It's like when your wife watches football just to fucking be able to talk to the boys.
yeah, exactly. It's like me trying to get into Wentworth. My wife's watching that now. It's like an Australian Orange is the New Black. It was made
Oh,
before.
okay.
And
Yeah.
so she's like, so I'll be like, honey, who's this and who's that? And I'm trying to get involved, but I also don't really care. And she's like, but you don't care. Like, I keep telling you this person's dead. Oh, okay. Never mind then. But
I just went through that with The Great. Lauren was watching The Great, and I would pop in and like see like some titties or something, and
Yeah.
like somebody getting killed. I'm like, well, why is this girl showing her titties, and why is this guy killing this guy? And she's like, watch the fucking show. And I'm like, well, I'm not interested in the whole show.
Yeah. I just want to see boobies. Yeah. Okay, so the plot is King Arthur, Graham Chapman, and his Knights of the Round Table embark on a surreal, low-budget search for the Holy Grail, encountering many very silly obstacles. Stars Graham Chapman as King Arthur and many others. John Cleese, Sir Lancelot, and many others. Sir Eric Idle, well, he's Sir now, but Eric Idle is Sir Robin and more. Terry Gilliam as Sir Bowers and Bors, and others. Terry Jones is Sir Bedivere and some others. And Michael Palin, I say others because they play a bunch of characters like they do in their movies. And Michael Palin is Sir Galahad and others. Written by the whole Monty Python cast and directed by 40 specially trained Ecuadorian mountain llamas, 6 Venezuelan red llamas, 142 Mexican whooping llamas, 14 North Chilean guanacos, closely related to the llama, regular llama of Brixton, 76,000 battery llamas from Llama Fresh Farms Limited near Paraguay, and Terry Gilliam and Terry Jones. So, and when this movie starts out, like, it is funny because they, like, those titles are like, they said, a spoof of Ingmar Bergman movies, like those, the ones that you and I, like Joe Merle, he'll be like, he had me watch it for International House of Horrors. We watched some Ingmar Bergman movie, and I'm like, I don't get it. Like, it's weird. I said, I took film, I took contemporary cinema, classic cinema, all that, intro to cinema. I said, but that stuff, like, unless I read something like, what's it about?
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But he's like, oh, I love it. I dive in. And I'm like, oh, I could dive in, but unless somebody's there with me to dive in, it's just like, oh, it's out of my realm. But what's funny is they play the music like an Ingmar Bergman movie. Then it goes to a little bit different music, like a regular Hollywood movie. And then, like, but it's all like, that guy's been sacked. Okay, this guy's doing the titles now. No, that guy's been fired. Now this guy's, okay, all 6 of those guys were fired, Just
It's
great.
it's very much like a Family Guy joke, where like they just like take it and take it until it's too far, and you're like, fuck off, and then finally you laugh because they just keep going with it.
Yeah. That's always great. Where you're like, Family Guy pushes it where you're like, there's a limit, but then you go a little past it, and it's still funny if you do it the right way.
I call that mining comedy.
Yeah. And that's the thing where it's hard to explain all these little things, like what makes it, it's like my dad, I remember talking to me about Holy Grail, like the Knights Who Say Knee, like he was like, oh, it's hilarious. Right. But I don't know if my dad's seen the whole movie or if he would get the comedy or if it would go too fast for him. Like some comedy goes too fast for him. Like,
right.
And then some isn't really explained, to jump to Mel Brooks. So Blazing Saddles, Harvey, what's his name? Harvey Korman, shows up with the new sheriff to talk to Mel Brooks, who's the mayor of the town. And he walks over to Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks walks over to him and puts his arm around him, but it's not Harvey Korman. He puts his arm around the black sheriff, and he's walking with him, and he goes, Can't you see this man's a nig? And he just stops, and he doesn't say anything, and he goes back, and he never finishes his sentence, and he goes back to Harvey Korman. And I'm laughing, and my dad goes, what's so funny? What? I go, he was going to say the whole word. Yeah, but I don't. And I'm like, but Dad, it's just funny. I can't explain it. It's just funny.
Right.
But, yeah. But their original story idea was like it was going to mix, kind of like it does now, but medieval times with now. So they would be looking for the Grail, and then they would show up in modern London, and in the end, the Knights of the Round Table were to have found the Grail at the Holy Grail counter at Harrods department store. So that's just like, where do we find it? Oh, here it is. They have everything. And as you and I will like, although you made more movies than me, I only tried to make one. Is the coconuts were just a necessity. They were like, it's going to cost a lot of money to have horses and do all this, and they were like, what about, coconut? I think Eric Idle's like, what about just some coconuts? And they're like, oh, okay. And they do it. And you're just like, oh, I get it. Okay.
That's how so much of their ideas were. They'd all write together, and then somebody would throw out an idea, and they were like, all right, man, we'll just do that,
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's a fun way to work sometimes.
Yeah.
But is it more fun for you than it is for the audience? Like sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Where I saw that on some things where it's like the Three-Headed Knight, like they're funny, but you could have excised that. Like you don't really need it, but it is funny. But there's some of those things on the other end of it is coming up with jokes. Then you're hurt because, no, my joke would really work here. But if you all work together as a group, then I think that you could be like, no, I get why. Those guys can explain to each other why it's not funny. This is not funny because of A, B, and C.
But that is tough, man. Like if you have too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to writing, like I couldn't work with 6 people to write because it's just some things aren't funny or some things are hilarious, but you can't explain how hilarious it is. You just have to see it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this whole movie. If you told somebody like, oh, you've got to see Monty Python on the Holy Grail because this, and this, it would sound stupid, know?
Yeah.
But it's like you just have to see it to understand that, it's craziness and you're not going to laugh at all of it, but there's going to be something in there that's going to crack you up.
Well, and then the other end of that if you write a movie by yourself, as you know, you may go, this is fucking brilliant. I wrote another Lockout. Like, this is great. And then they're going to go, oh, my God, why did you eat that whole burrito? And you're like, because it's funny. And they're like, I don't get, you just look like a slob. And you're like, no, it's hilarious.
Right.
Or the Time Machine one. Like, it was funny. Like, but other people just go, what the fuck? But that's, it's just, but anyway. But that's the thing where, that's a good thing with working with other people where they can go, nah, this needs to be, let's tighten that up. Let's do this,
Right.
But Bring Out Your Dead always makes me laugh where he's like, I'm not dead. And he's like, yes, he is. And he goes, I think I'm going to go for a walk. No. And he's like, I'm feeling so much better. And then he like hits him over the head. Oh, so great. And that was all filmed at that one castle when they showed like, it was just different angles of the castle, and they said
they were supposed to have all these different castles, and then all of a sudden they were like, no, and they pulled like all of their like locations that they scouted.
Yeah,
that's a nightmare for that to happen. You know,
well,
even to lose one location, but to lose all your castle locations.
Well, and even the castle was like, I don't know, you're going to be making jokes, and they said, and now all of a sudden the biggest tourist attraction in Scotland is that castle. Like people go there because Monty Python, not because it's a old castle, but because of Monty Python. But that's the thing where sometimes though that the thing of necessity makes you write in a different way. Like I think I've told you before, I don't know if it was your show or my show, when I was going to do that movie, I said, okay, my movie takes place in downtown Glendale here in Arizona, in Phoenix. And I said, so they're going to run through the library, they're going to do all this. And I go to talk to City Hall or whoever. Like, I had to jump all through these people. Finally, I get to somebody. She goes, did you write it? I go, yeah. She goes, why don't you just have it take place in the desert? And then you don't have to get any permits or nothing. And we don't have to lock down the streets, pay for the police. Like, you don't have to pay all that. And I was like, oh, my God, brilliant. Okay. And then I rewrote everything in the desert. So.
Yeah, I used to always do horror stuff so that we could film in the woods because I had woods all around my house.
Yeah.
So it was always stuff like that. And I had a friend of mine who got all lofty aspirations and shit. He wanted to do a scene in the airport. And I was like, there's no fucking way they're going to let you film in the airport. But he went in like with a fucking suit and shit and like made it sound like he was like this big production designer guy.
Yeah.
And they told him he could do it, but he had to have insurance for the airport for all the people that were there.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So, So I won't say who this was, but he had a relative of his fill out $1 million fake insurance policy.
Wow. Yeah.
And delivered that so that he could film in the airport. And then his movie he never even finished his movie.
Oh,
it was just like he did all these big sequences and then nothing happened of it.
Damn. Yeah, that's like speaking to Terry Gilliam. You want that big scene in 12 Monkeys where he's running through the thing and all that, and sees himself as a boy, and such a great scene. Check out Popcorn Promises for their first episode of 12 Monkeys.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. But I told you about mine where I was mistaken for. They thought I was Bret Michaels, part of Bret Michaels' movie that was filmed here with Charlie Sheen.
No.
Yeah, so I went downtown to talk about the library and stuff. I was like, I'm gonna film a movie, and she goes, "Oh, are you with that Charlie Sheen movie coming?" And I'm like, I was like, no, which I should have said yes. Give me everything.
Yeah.
I was
Damn
like,
it, Phil.
yeah,
When
yeah.
somebody
when
asks
if you're a god,
Sheen movie, you say yes.
Someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. So I was like, no, and she's like, oh, well, and then that's when she went on to that. And then later when I investigated, I was like, oh, that was the Charlie Sheen, Bret Michaels directed movie, out there at the raceway where they filmed at the abandoned raceway.
Do you remember what it was? Was it Terminal Velocity?
Beyond the Law or something?
The biker one?
Yeah.
I'm
where
a huge Charlie Sheen guy, so I know them all.
Yeah, of course, where he's undercover cop or something. But anyway, it was just funny where I was like, oh, shit. Gilliam and his wife's hands, they're the ones turning the pages on the book.
Right,
so
and then
like
Gilliam put on the monkey hands.
Yeah. So, and that's another thing. Like, it makes no sense, but she's turning the pages. All of a sudden, a gorilla hand grabs her and pulls her hand away. And then it's the gorilla hand turning the pages from then on. It's like,
yeah, who the fuck came up with that,
Yeah. It's like, it's just crazy. And that was filmed in Gilliam's, like, living room, like, just on the ground, like, filming the book on the ground, like, turning the pages. And The Black Knight is, like, that's, like, the biggest, I think, that everybody knows from, if you've never seen the Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you know the Black Knight scene.
Right.
And that was actually inspired by a story that John Cleese heard about in school. That was, it was during an extremely scrappy match. Like, these Roman wrestlers were wrestling around, and the guy ends up tapping out because he can't move. But he finds out later that he tapped out, but the opponent that he was fighting died while they were wrestling.
Oh,
so it was a thing of, like, don't give up. like if you give up, like, you could be the winner, but you tapped out, and now you lost to the dead guy. And so they put that in there where it's like, no, it's just a flesh wound. So good. And so I never noticed when they get to the part, I don't know if you noticed it. I think I noticed it but didn't put it together with the first part of the movie. When they're talking about where'd you get the coconuts? Coconuts are tropical.
Oh, yeah.
How'd you? And then later it cuts to Sir Bedivere when you first see him. And he's holding a bird and with a coconut tied to it, and he's trying to figure it out. And you're like, holy shit. Like, oh, it's a callback.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah.
They really do hit real stuff in history, but then they're like taking the piss out of it, which is great. And I was saying, like, that's like in the early 2000s, like the Daily Show was where everybody got their news.
Yeah.
And with like the Monty Python stuff, like I was like, oh, this is all just ridiculous. And then you find out, like, no, there were knights that went on crusades for the Holy Grail. Like, all this shit is real.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same thing though with movies where there's people that watch movies that are like, Braveheart's a true story. I'm totally, oh my God, it was so sad. And then they're like, then you tell them it was 1,000-line or 500-line poem or song that somebody wrote. That's all it is. Yeah, they tied the guy up, separated his body, and put it all over to be like, don't fuck with the government. And and all of a sudden it's like, no, all that stuff happened and all the freedom. No, here's what happened. So yeah.
Yeah, it didn't turn out as good for William Wallace.
Yeah. Well, and an interesting one of those useless facts that only you and I care about on Braveheart, when he was directing that, this is the problem with being your own director, and he was like, no, just string me up by my neck. I think I can handle it. It'll be fine. So they go, okay. So when they string him up, he was like, I can't breathe. No, down. Because he was like, okay, let's do something else where it looks like I'm strangling. So, so good. And then when they come across Camelot, and Terry Gilliam's like, it's a model. It's only a model. And it is, and you're just like, oh, so good. Like,
I love those little
in-jokes. Like,
it's the little throwaways, that are the best thing about this movie. My favorite thing is when Arthur goes by, and I don't remember what part, but it's Eric Idle who says it, and he's like, "Oh, he must be a king," and he's like, "Why?" He's like, "He's the only one not covered in shit."
Yeah. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that.
And when he's like, "Excuse me, old man," and he's like, "I'm not old. I'm only 37."
Yeah. No, that. And then when the French soldier, like him, like, I fart in your general direction, and John Cleese just.
I still say that all the time.
Yeah, and your mother smells of elderberries, and your father was a hamster. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
like, what?
Amazing.
Like, you tell anybody that, they wouldn't get it. It's just. But they said French soldiers used to really taunt their enemies, and they would catapult dead or rotting animals at their.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. It's like you said. Like, some of that is true, and they said Terry Gilliam is a big like history fan. So,
right.
like, he's done some movies with some historian people and stuff. So, and then when they build that Trojan Rabbit, and you're like waiting, like, oh, they built it like there, and you're seeing them wheel it inside, and you're like, oh man, this is gonna be what's gonna happen. And then all of a sudden, you see them all pop up, and King Arthur's like, so what now? Well, now me and Sir Bedivere, we jump out and we go. Oh, what do you mean? Oh shit, yeah, okay. And it's like, wasted. And then it's launched at him and crushes that guy. Oh, so good.
Yeah, I love that. Run away!
And then, yeah. Run away. And then the same thing with the historian. Like, now you have a historian standing in the woods talking about the history of King Arthur. And then just somebody runs by and slits his throat and he's dead. And you're like, holy shit. Like, oh, so great. Oh. And they keep going back to that through the movie. Like, the cops show up. Like, she calls the police.
The wife is there. She's
show
all
up.
sad.
Like, then they cover his body. Like, his whole thing. And Sir Robin's song, I can't think of how it went, but it's talking about, like, and then he'll be killed, and he'll have his head cut off, and he's like, okay. He's so brave, but then he's going to die. And he's like, all right, just enough with the song already. And then the three-headed knights that are arguing, and then they look back, and Sir Robin's gone. Yeah. And the Castle Anthrax, which was always my favorite, because there's scantily clad women in wet outfits with no underwear on. And she's like, give us all a good spanking, and then the oral sex. And he's like, well, okay, I guess I can stay. And then they all break in. They're like, we're here to save you. He's like, no, wait.
Like, I don't need to be saved.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, wait. Oh, it's so good. And then, and again, it's like you said, if you wrote this, unless you're Monty Python, and even that is like, who sits there and goes, okay, Jason, we're going to do the knights who say knee. And you're like, what? And I'm like, no, they say knee. Yeah. And then, like, part of your thing is, let's have a guy who doesn't understand knee. So Sir Bedivere is like, no, the knights knee. And then for them to go, what do you want? What shall we bring you? A shrubbery?
Right.
And, like, who thought of that? Like, a shrubbery. And then later when he's like, bring us 2 shrubberies, we make a little path.
Yeah, it's so nonsensical, but then, like, there's something genius about it, too.
Yeah.
And not everything hits. And I think, like, Flying Circus, like, shows that. Like, Flying Circus is a lot of the stuff that didn't hit. Yeah. And then the movies are, like, much more well polished.
Yeah.
But what I just assumed that these guys, like, just loved and trusted each other. Yeah. But I was watching this behind the scenes thing, and they were like, we don't hang out. We're not friends outside of this. We're just really good work partners.
Yeah.
So much so that they didn't know that, like, the lead dude, the guy who played Arthur, was a total alcoholic and was like, he eventually died of alcoholism, but they had no idea how bad it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's funny is, it's funny with people like that where people think, oh, well, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover are friends because they were in the movie. No, right. They're acquaintances who get together to do a movie. And it's like, I've heard other actors are like, no, you actually want to, like, we should hang out. Like, you meet somebody and you're like, we should really hang out. We should. And then after the movie's over in 3 months, you're not hanging out. You're not doing shit. And it's like, what the fuck? Yeah. So yeah, it's but no, they work well together.
I think that's super rare for actors to like make relationships that last beyond a movie.
Yeah.
But like I love it that like Catherine O'Hara, she calls Macaulay Culkin son after even when she hasn't seen him for like 10 years. She's like, son.
Well, and even that, and those guys kind of hang out, but again, I think that SCTV relationship is kind of the same as Monty Python, where, her and the guy with the fuzzy eyebrows from American Pie, him were in a show. Yeah, Eugene Levy, they were in a show together, but like they talked to Martin Short. They, used to hang out with John Candy, like, all that stuff. But the part I love is the tale of Sir Lancelot, where you're like, where's this going? Like, it cut to, like, this feminine male who's, like, a little boy who's like, oh, but I don't want to marry her. And then he's like, the father comes in and goes, make sure he doesn't leave until I get back. And Eric Idle's like, okay, got it. So we can leave when you leave. No, you gotta, no, okay. And then as soon as he leaves, they both turn. Him and Graham Chapman turn and start following him. And he's like, no, you stay here. Oh, yeah, I got it. And then they totally don't get it. It's so great. Like, just that. And that's one that goes on for a while where you're just, but you can sit there almost all day. Like, same thing with the I'm not dead. Like, that goes on. But it's hilarious. Like, it's done in little different,
one of my favorite jokes like that is in that Lancelot skit, and it's where he's running toward the castle, and they're like they're looking at him, and he's like way the fuck out there, and he's just hauling ass, running, and they just cut back to him, and he's just like barely made any progress whatsoever, and they do that probably 6 times, man. Yeah, it's like, and then all of a sudden he's just in frame, stabs that dude, and runs into the castle. That is so great.
Yeah, because it keeps cutting at them, and they're like, "What?" And it cuts back to him, and it's the same shot of him coming over the hill a little bit, and then keeps cutting back to, and then when it does cut back to them, he's there and like just slaughtering everybody, and you're like, holy shit. And then the part that I love that's just ridiculous is him running up the stairs, and he hits that flowers hanging on the hanging on a little sconce thing, and he hits that with his sword, like, and kicks the bride in the stomach, like, it's like, oh my
somebody
God.
says that like real quiet under their breath too. They're like, he kicked the bride in the stomach.
Yeah. And then they go back to the Knights Who Say Knee, and they're no longer the Knights Who Say Knee. Now they're the Knights Who Say Wimbling, like all this other stuff. And now they need another shrubbery and chop down the largest tree in the forest with a herring. And then they just hold up the herring, and it's like, oh my God, so great. Oh, I know we don't do this justice because we're not Monty Python. And then when they meet the enchanter, and you're like, oh, this is Merlin. He's going to introduce himself and say, my name is Merlin. And they're like, what's your name, Sir Enchanter? And he's like, Tim. And you're just like, oh my God, like, so great. And then, of course, everything that we talked about when we were kids in school was like, there he is. Where? Behind the rabbit? It is the rabbit. And they're like, that little thing. He's like, I'll go take care of it. And he walks in all, and it just, like so quick. Like, I was like, how did they do that with like their special effects? Like, what? Like, I was thinking, would it be a bungee where I would snap it and have it jump at them? But
I think they literally just had like a rabbit with a stick in its ass, and they just like poked everybody with it.
That makes sense. Yeah, because you see it when it's panning over to them, but you can't see a stick. But yeah, it's probably just the first part of it. But yeah, it's
this movie though. Stuff. It's so micro budgeted, and considering they had done so much stuff before this movie, you'd think like, you always think like, oh, these guys hit it big, and then now they're all rich. Like that wasn't the case at all. Yeah. And in this movie, it had such a micro budget that they had to borrow a rabbit from somebody who lived nearby to do that rabbit scene, and they put the fucking red shit all over it. And they were like, don't worry, it'll wash right out. And then they couldn't get the red shit off the white fur. And so they're all like backstage, like scrubbing this fucking rabbit. And they had to give it back to this lady and be like, we're sorry, we fucked up your rabbit.
Sorry, it's a pink rabbit. Yeah. Well, and that they went to like Pink Floyd and all these different groups, Genesis, Pink Floyd, and were like, give us $20,000. Went to 10 different people, got $20,000, and was able to make this $200,000 movie. And it was like, oh my God. and the holy hand grenade. So right away I started looking, can I get on Amazon like a box that you open up that I could put here that you open up, there'd be a holy hand grenade in there, but no. And then, of course, on Ready Player One, they have that holy hand grenade. Remember one of the things he got was a holy hand grenade. It was like cool.
Yeah.
And then those 3 questions, like, what's your name? What are you doing? And then whatever. For Lancelot, it was real easy, and then he went on through. And but then it got hard. Eric Idle's like, Sir Robin's like, wait, what? And he got launched away, and then it's, what's an African swallow or a South American swallow, and he's like, I don't know that, and then he flies away. Oh, so good. And then you see Lancelot being arrested because they're like, where'd Lancelot go? Like, he went across the bridge. Like, where is he? And you see him being handcuffed over a cop car, and you're like, wait, I thought we were watching a medieval movie. Is this a village? Wait, what's going on?
So crazy, man. Just absolute idiocracy. And they never do find the Holy Grail.
Yeah, exactly. And then the French knight again, and now they're all going to attack that. They're all running to the water. It's done so great where they're all running to the water, and then you just see a cop car pull up into frame and stop them all. And the movie ends with just that one cop going, hey, put that away, and he puts his hand over the camera, and the end. And you're just like, oh my God, so perfect, so great.
My favorite skit, though, we didn't talk about, which is the witch skit. That is my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah.
When he's like trying to get them to figure out, like, how do we know she's a witch?
Oh, yeah. He's like, look at her nose. He's like, this isn't her. She's like, that's not my nose.
He all pulls it aside and looks. He's like, oh, yeah, no, they put that on me.
Yeah.
And John Cleese says, she turned me into a newt.
Yeah.
Well, I got better.
Yeah. And then the whole thing of like, what does wood do? When you throw wood in the water, does it float? Yeah, it floats. So what does that mean? She made of wood. Yeah. And they're just all this other stuff. And then finally they go to weigh her.
Yeah, she weighs the same as a duck.
And the
then
duck,
she's a witch.
And it's like, oh my God.
But that's how crazy it was, Like, you look into the
it's
Salem witch trials, and it was that nuts.
They would throw them in the water. They would tie them by their hands and feet, throw them in the water, and say, if they float, they're a witch. If they drown, they're not a witch. And they would drown, and then they're, our bad. She wasn't a witch, but she's dead now. So, like, it's like, oh my gosh, so crazy. And so anybody who wants to check out Life of Brian on Popcorn Promises can do that. But on a promo tour for this movie, they were in Paris, and Eric Idle, they asked, what's your next movie? And Eric Idle jokingly answered, Jesus Christ, Lust for Glory. And the rest of them liked that idea, and so they wrote The Life of Brian.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And now we're on to our favorite. Now, I haven't seen Last Crusade. I bought it on videotape when it came out. I used to watch it all the time. I had the surround sound system where I'd always play that part of like, Dad, we're well out of range. And then, and it was really cool on the surround sound and everything. And so I hadn't seen this for a while. Like, I'd seen Raiders like a lot. I've seen Temple of Doom more probably recently than I've seen Last Crusade. Yeah. And so I just kind of put off Last Crusade because I was like, I saw it a lot on video back in the day.
Right.
So Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade from 1989. In 1938, after his father, Professor Henry Jones Sr., goes missing while pursuing the Holy Grail, Professor Henry Indiana Jones Jr. finds himself up against Adolf Hitler's Nazis again to stop them from obtaining its power. And it stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, Sean Connery as Professor Henry Jones, Denholm Elliott as Marcus Brody, Alison Doody as Elsa, John Rhys Davies as Sala, Julian Glover as Walter Donovan, and if you remember from my For Your Eyes Only episode, he was a bad guy, Chris Statos. And he's also in Empire Strikes Back as one of the Imperial people.
Did you know workers. That Alison Doody was also a Bond girl?
Yeah. From View to a Kill, right?
View to a Kill, that's right.
Yeah. And she was, what's her name's girlfriend, I think, in the thing. who's that girl's name? The black girl, Grace Jones, but I can't think of her name in the movie. But River Phoenix is young Indiana Jones, and Michael Byrne is Vogel. So Michael Byrne, you look at and you go, this guy looks familiar. He is like the Nazi guy, and he's pretty cool. Anyway, written by Jeffrey Boehm.
Did you just say a Nazi guy was pretty cool? Let me stop you there.
Okay, good call. Michael Byrne is pretty cool. And Jeffrey Boehm wrote the screenplay, and George Lucas and Menno Mayes, I don't know how to say this name, but he wrote Color Purple, did the story. And then George Lucas and Philip Kaufman created the characters, and it was directed by a little guy named Steven Spielberg.
Who's
and
that?
That was one where, like you talked about, like, even though he didn't really go as illegal as that friend of yours did with the airport, but Steven Spielberg just takes a clipboard, walks through the front gate at Universal, and they just go, okay, he must know what he's doing. He's wearing a suit and a tie, and okay. And they let him in, and he goes and watches all these greats directing these films in all these studios. And then later he ends up working there, and it's like, holy shit. Like,
yeah, try doing that in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. In his first go at the script, Christopher Columbus fleshed out. So Lucas had this idea for a Scottish ghost idea, and it was going to be like the late Baron Seamus Seagrove III, but replaced the Fountain of Youth with Peaches of Immortality, a construct of Chinese mythology. Also present in Columbus's first draft was a 200-year-old pygmy, a cannibalistic African tribe, and a college student named Betsy whose love for Dr. Jones tests the limits of sanity. And then I wrote, he loves the young ladies.
Yes, he does.
And then Columbus took another crack at the script, and this time including a major sequence, this part sounds kind of cool, in which the titular Monkey King challenges Indy to a game of chess using real people as pieces who suffer quite the sour fate if captured. Additionally, this version sees Indy get hitched to archaeologist Dr. Claire Clark, I don't know how old she is, a Katharine Hepburn type. So that would have been cool. And then Indy almost had a nun as a love interest. So
Jesus, dude.
On one of those incarnations of the script, his dad dies and goes to heaven, and then he gets with this ex-nun and like goes off in the sunset or whatever.
Is it Sally Field?
It's like, yeah, it might be, yeah. They fly off. He's like, go after my dad, and they fly off after. Up and away.
Oh, goddamn. Why, after Star Wars, did they even let George Lucas into the room anymore? Like,
yeah.
At some point, you've got to tell George Lucas to just shut the fuck up, because it's as much nonsense. Go right for the Monty Python boys, because your nonsense will work great there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's when he was like, I want to do a ghost story, and Spielberg was like, I just did Poltergeist. I don't want to do a ghost story. And he's like, how about the Holy Grail? Spielberg's like, no. And Spielberg said, like, he thought that people would think of the Holy Grail and they'd think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So all he was thinking was, run away.
Right, yeah.
So then finally they decide to go ahead and do the Holy Grail, which is interesting in the movie sense, to jump to the end of it or whatever, where he needs that faith. Like, with the archaeology, with the Ark, like, he saw the Ark open, he saw it burn faces, like, he knows that there's some power there, but still he doesn't believe. Like, still he's like, I'm not sure.
No, I think the thing that cracked this story was when they decided to do the father-son relationship. Yeah, that was what made this story above and beyond the other Indiana Jones movies.
Well, and the same thing with where they had the idea and then they fucked it up with young Indiana Jones, although I remember, because I loved Indiana Jones, I wanted to watch every episode of Young Indy. And
of course, we all did.
And then I would always miss it on Tuesdays or whatever day it was on. I was like, damn, I missed it. And then when it came out, like, on video, I was like, I should buy all these. And then I'm like, no, do I really want to? And then I saw a couple episodes, and I'm like, this is kind of cheesy. Like, I don't... Yeah. It's not as cool. And
not good. And I love the opening, seeing young Indiana Jones, and we get more in those opening couple of minutes about his character than we did in 3 fucking movies.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it was really well done. And if River Phoenix would have been the one who took it to TV and did the young Indiana Jones, I would have watched a whole movie with River Phoenix as Indiana Jones, you know?
Yeah, heroin. How Indy got onto heroin and died at the Viper Room. No, rest in peace, River Phoenix. Lost his virginity on the set of Stand By Me. To his babysitter.
To who?
To his babysitter. He
Oh,
told
he
Will
had a
Wheaton.
babysitter?
He told Will Wheaton, like, I had this person, like, I had sex. Yeah, fuck that bitch. No, I don't know what he said. But no, it's the best opening where this movie is just a feel good fucking. It's like they said. They brought in everything from Raiders. He's like, I wanted to bring some of those people back and give you that. I want to apologize for Temple of Doom. And I want to do this because, like we said, him and George were in dark places after their divorces, and was like, let's talk about it. So now,
when you don't realize how much levity Sala and Marcus Brody bring to the story,
and
but they really did lighten it up.
Like watching Sala. In case you guys don't know, John Rhys Davies was, I don't know his name, maybe you know, Lord of the Rings. I know Lord of the Rings. I own the movies, but I forget the little guy, the little dwarf. Like, he's the dwarf guy, and he's hilarious in that movie, and he's great, and he's got a good character, and always good. But yeah, it's the thing of they just decided, let's open this movie like before, like when Indy's young, and all that shit. Like, one day of his was everything. Like, he even, you see that snake crawl across that boy, and he just picks it up. He goes, it's just a snake. And he throws it away, and he's talking to his friend. And then again, you see how what you and I said we love about this character and any characters who make shit up as they go is he's like, what are you going to do? He goes, I don't know. I'll figure it out. And you're like, holy shit. And then he takes the cross of Coronado. Oh, so you see the guy, and you're thinking, oh, is this the Indiana? That's Indiana Jones. Like, okay, what's going on? And then the guy turns around. It's not Indiana Jones. And River Phoenix is, and you're like, holy shit. And you're like, that's where he got his look. That's where he was like, this guy was wearing a hat doing this. And then they chase, and there's the cool thing so it's action right away. The movie just starts a little like set up, like, master shot, and then boom, you're in it. And the part that I love is the water tank's coming up, and he's on the roof of the train, and he grabs it, and he spins around, and he just ends up right back on the train. It's like...
Yeah, that was great. Like, that's like Buster Keaton stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's
such good physical comedy.
And it's almost like you could see, like, if he had wobbly legs and he fell, like, that would be just like Raiders, And he does fall, and then he ends up backing up and falling into the thing. And then the lion and the whip, so like him, doing the whip, and you're like, holy shit. And then... the greatest part at the end, he goes to his dad to tell his dad. His dad's like, calm down, counting Latin. And you're like, oh, shit, he's got something to tell you. And then the cop is like, this will go to the proper owners. And he's like, what? And he gives it to that guy. And that guy takes his hat off and puts it on Indy and pushes the hat down. And then when you see Indy, it's a great cut where then Indy looks up and it's fucking, it's Harrison Ford now. It's Indy.
Such a good cut. And I
on the boat chasing the guy that took the cross.
Yeah. I love the line right there too, where he's like, you lost today, kid, but you don't have to like it.
Yeah.
And that made me be like, I want to know about that guy, dude.
Yeah,
like, I want a whole
you,
fucking Disney Plus series on that dude.
Yeah, exactly. I totally want that. I'm like, tell me more about that guy. Like, it doesn't have to be Indiana Jones. Like, just give me that. Forget Tomb Raider. Give me that guy.
Exactly.
And then I love the part when he's in school and he's like, X never marks a spot. And when you first see it, as first seeing the movie, you're just like, oh my God, I love that, because always on maps, it's X is where it is. And you don't know where it's going. You don't know what that means until it gets there. So you're just like, oh my God, it's so great. And then we'll get there in a little bit, but then the Grail Diary, like, it just looks cool. Like, it's all, like, I wanted to get one of those too to put on my desk, put on a thing somewhere, put on a shelf. So the Grail Diary is cool. And then, so here's what I learned from this movie. It's pretty good if you can't be trusted, Jason, that you tell other people to don't trust anyone. Because that's what he tells him when he puts him on the plane, is like, whatever you do, don't trust anybody. It's like, you mean I shouldn't trust you? Okay,
Right.
don't trust anybody else. Okay, I got you. No, I'll be leery of everyone except for you. And then, that's the bad guy working with. He's either working for the Nazis or he's because later he's like, forget Hitler, forget this. Like, this is mine. Like, it's like, what? He's probably just like, give me the money, I'll find it. And then he's like, zoink. Yeah. And then the best part that I loved ever, I still love it. I loved it when I first saw it, was him going into the church, because it's that figuring out things. And him and Marcus are like, wait, there's the 10, there's the 13, the 7, there's, whatever, the 3, the 7, and the 10. And then they put that together, and then he's like, where's the 10? And then he goes up the stairs, and he finds a big X on the floor, big Roman numeral, and it's like, holy shit. And then he just starts pounding it with a stanchion, and you're just like, it's so fucking cool. Like, he's...
And I love that they cut to the librarian with the stamp.
Yeah,
that was such a funny little gag that worked so good. And that was one of those things, like, on the page, I would have been like, I don't know, guys, I think we're going too far.
Yeah.
But it really works, and it's really funny.
Yeah, and the guy's like, what? And he can't figure it out. And And then when they go down there and there's a drawing on the wall, it's a carving of the Ark, and she's like, "What's
such
that?"
A great
and he
callback.
goes, "The Ark of the Covenant." And she goes, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "I'm pretty sure." And you're like, "Yeah, he's fucking definitely sure."
Yeah, that's one of those great indie moments.
And then something I wrote here in all caps is, "Can you open your eyes in petroleum water?" Like that shit's flammable. Like, he dips it in there and he lights it, and I'm thinking, don't trip with that torch, because that whole thing will go up. And
Absolutely.
he's walking around, and then when he's like, hold your breath and go under the water, and he's opening his eyes, and I'm like, isn't that gonna sting? Isn't there petroleum in there? Like, oh
yeah. Not only that, but there's no lights in there. It would just be complete blackness, and it's like the clearest blue water you've ever seen.
Yeah, very true. And then they had to breed their own rats for that. Like, they couldn't get...
That's crazy.
They couldn't get a rat. So they just had a room full of, like, bookshelves of, like, all these rats. And they were just... And then there's on the making of, Harrison Ford's holding one of the rats. And he's like, I used to own, like, rats. I used to own all this stuff. He goes, they're not bad. And what's good is that if they were wild rats, they might bite you. They'd have disease, all this shit. So they...
Right.
And then... Spielberg's like, don't worry, we didn't kill any real rats. He goes, they had these little motorized ones that would do this and would swim. And so they had that. And so that was great. And then that boat chase, so fucking cool. And, and the thing of like, go around. Go between them? Are you crazy? No, don't go between them. Go around them. And you're like, oh, fuck.
Allison Duty did a lot of the driving of the boat in that scene, which is crazy. And she had never driven a boat before. Yeah. It's just one of those things where, like,
she was talking about how
it's in the script. Do it.
She was like, it was stressful because she'd hit the sides and hit things, and she's trying to, like, Indy's, Harrison Ford's actually fighting in the back, and she's trying to, like, focus, like, be there for the camera in the right spot, and it's like, oh my God, like.
That's a lot of pressure, man. Can you imagine? Because, I mean, Harrison Ford is not someone you'd want to piss off. I could just tell, you know?
Yeah.
And for her to be doing that and try to, like you said, they're in another boat and they're filming everything, and she's just got to hit her mark.
Yeah, you got to stay at a certain pace where you're like,
right.
But it's the same thing where it seemed on all, of course, it's a making of, and it's, video footage of behind the scenes, but it seemed like Harrison Ford, this is before Harrison Ford got tired with Hollywood. Like, he was having fun, and he enjoyed, like, hanging out with everybody. And him and Sean Connery, they showed a part of them practicing the slap scene where he slaps him.
Yeah.
And then he ends up hugging him afterwards to show, like, there's no hard feeling. It's just so
Connery's another one, though, that I've heard is just a unabashed prick.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine those two on screen together.
Although they said for that, where it was like, where they had his character a certain way, like kind of a cookie cutter, like you're this yoga kind of guy, like this just archaeology teacher that's just strict. And he was like, no, I should be more like, what do you call it? Anyway, more like just into my little things, my little qualms.
Right.
What do you call it? Anyway. It's something with an E.
Yeah.
Not eclectic.
Eccentricities.
Yeah.
I'm so close.
Something like that. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. He brought more to it, and then they fleshed out the character, and they were like, okay, yeah, we like that. and that worked out so good. And I
One
love
of the things that they had said was that that Sean Connery said was that George Lucas had a problem with the fact that they were going to change it to make it that Indy and him had sex with,
with the
Elsa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, George Lucas had a problem with that. He had Luke fucking his sister.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and if you think about it, because I was thinking about this earlier, at the end, he says, "Let it go." And you got Elsa and you got Let It Go. Like, is this Frozen? Is this Frozen 1? But that boat chase scene, though, real quick, to go back to that, when that's being chewed up by that big propeller, like, it's so cool. And they film it with a long lens, so it looks like they're in danger, like that it's going to chew them up at any minute. And then then you realize, like, this guy was protecting the Holy Grail, and so good. And then Indy goes undercover to that to that castle. And he's like, "Oh, we're the tapestries," and so good. And Connery and Ford are great together. Like, I love just when he
such good chemistry.
Yeah,
I was trying to think. Can you think of anybody else who could have pulled off that part?
No, it's and that's what else is kind of cool. Yeah, I can't think of anybody at that time. Like, that's all you can think of now, of course. But then again, it's like, remember when they were like, Batman's going to be Michael Keaton. And everybody said, the guy from Beetlejuice? No. Like, the guy from Mr. Mom? It's not going to... And then all of a sudden they were like, oh, wait a minute. But the other thing that was cool, speaking of River Phoenix, is Harrison told Steven, he was like, I did this movie called Mosquito Coast where River Phoenix played my son. He's the only one that looks more like me that I did when I was that age, so you should get him. So they were like, okay. And River Phoenix was like, yeah, I used to make fun of him. Like, when he turned around, I'd, redo what he did. I'd copy him or whatever. So
speaking of that, though, have you ever seen Mosquito Coast?
No. I think I saw part of it, but not.
That is an intense movie. It's really good. Yeah, you should definitely check that out.
I will. I'll look for it. I'll check it out. And then when, so then they're captured. Indy and they find out that Elsa's bad, and they say, he goes, my son wouldn't have brought the Grail diary here. What are you, stupid? And he's like, yeah, I gave it to Marcus. And he's like, are you crazy? No, Marcus will blend in. He'll disappear. You'll never see him. And then it does that cool thing, cuts to Brody in a suit, like going, you speak English? Anybody around here speak English? Hello? And then Sala shows up. He's like, Sala. And then Sala's like, that guy goes, hey, how you doing? And he goes, there's no embassy here. There's no whatever here. And Marcus doesn't hear him, like, doesn't get it. And he's like, what? And then he goes, oh, papers? Yeah, I got papers. Papers? Of course, yeah. Run. Yeah, papers. Here you go. Let me run. And Marcus is still like, what? And then finally he's just like, run. And he punches him and they take off. And then Marcus gets put on the thing almost like Indiana Jones, like, like Raiders, whatever. Goes into the thing, and the truck drives away. And so now Marcus is captured and the Grail diary, and Indy and his dad tied together, and they're Eskimo brothers. I wrote, and and that's just such a cool scene. They're just dynamic together. It's just great. Like, they're totally perfect, and and it's good that. It could be, like, stale, it could have came off, although these are two great actors, so maybe no matter, it's like you hear, I don't know if you heard this, Officer and a Gentleman, Richard Gere and what's her name, like, hated each other, did not get along at all, but that movie, everybody's like, they love each other, it's such a great tearjerker, I love it, when he picks her up and carries her out, and to think that she's like, you fucking smug-ass piece of shit, and he's like, fuck you, bitch, and he's walking her out, and it's all romantic, and the music plays. Same thing with Casablanca. They said Humphrey Bogart and what's her name? They didn't get along either. Really? But all of a sudden, it's like this big love story, that everybody loves. But so sometimes actors are just so good that you believe it, and you're just like, oh, okay. And then that hidden staircase, which they had to throw some comedy in there, so I get it. And also kind of showing the father more little characteristic of him being like, I always found if you sit down and you relax, it'll come to you. And he leans back and he goes, oh, yeah. And then that cool little music starts playing, the little cue. And then the motorcycle chase is great, and that's cool where they were like, we need more action. Spielberg's like, we need more action. Let's put a motorcycle chase in here. And they just went to Lucas's like compound where he had Lucasfilm, like where that is, and they just filmed in the valley there, like
nice
on his compound. And they were like, okay. But what's funny is like so Indy sees the motorcycle, or at least maybe the crate says motorcycle and sidecar, and he has the idea, and he runs off camera. He doesn't run off camera. You just see him go, Dad, no, we're not going on a boat. And his dad's like, but there's a boat. Like, I don't get it. And then they run to the box. But then everybody comes out. They're looking for him. They see that boat driving away. They think it's them. And then they get on a boat. And then all of a sudden the lid pops down, and Indy and his dad drive out. And you're like, so did you grab that, like you opened it and then had to kind of grab it to hold on to it, but then be on the like holding it, like, you know? So it's kind of funny where, why didn't you just leave and they wouldn't have seen you? But yeah, but it's great though, because then all of a sudden that thing drops down and they're gone. So very cool. And then Indy meets Hitler, which is always kind of odd. And then I remember when that came out, people were like, you know, they got it wrong. Hitler was left-handed, and he wouldn't have signed with his right. And it was like, come on, it's a movie, guys. Just Seriously. Leave it alone. And that's like one of the facts that I started to look up for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And it was like, here's what, if the Nazis would have got into the Ark of the Covenant, it wouldn't have worked because they were evil. And if they would have got the whole, like, yeah, we know, like, don't tell me that bullshit. Like, that's why I don't read the IMDb shit, because it's all like, do you know that Sean Connery used to be James Bond and Steven Spielberg wanted to do a James Bond movie? Yeah, we fucking know. Like, leave that out of this facts. Right. But Spielberg had them because he's a Jew and because I'm sure people just don't want to Heil Hitler. So he was like, with your other hand, like, cross your fingers. And so if you feel bad about it, so they would do that. He's like, have your fingers crossed behind your back. And then,
but I just love that thought of Indiana Jones fighting Nazis. Like, it just fits so perfect, you know?
Yeah, it's those old serials that are just so great. Like, where they got the idea from was like, you know. And what else is interesting with, you know, we named the dog Indiana. It's all of that stuff, the mythos of Indiana Jones and Star Wars, which is the dog's named Indiana. He was a Newfoundland that's real hairy, and that's where Chewie came from when he shows up at home, when his wife shows up with the groceries, and she got the Newfoundland strapped into the seat, in the passenger seat, and he's like, oh, my God, a Wookiee, I got it. And he writes down a Wookiee. And then when he's thinking of a character, he's like, how about Indiana Jones? And they're like, what's it? My dog's named Indiana. And they're like, oh, okay. But when they were on the Zeppelin,
good thing you didn't write it. It would have been called Buttercup Jones.
That's right. That's right. I got other dogs. I got Dexter and Archer, and we named Archer after Archer. And so Ford and Connery took off their pants while shooting the scene in the Zeppelin, because Connery's like, I'm gonna take my pants off. And Ford is like, what do you mean? He's like, if I leave my pants on, it's very hot in here, and I'm just going to start sweating profusely. And he's like, okay. So they both took their pants off and did the scene, you know, when they're at the table talking about, no, you were just coming into who you should have been when you left or whatever. Oh, so good. And then the no ticket, you know. He's got the, and again, just like when he stole the army guy's thing, where the coat is too small for him, it's like real tight, and then he throws the guy up, as opposed to the old school things where they just steal an outfit and it would fit right away. And then they leave the Zeppelin and they go to the plane, and you kind of saw that in an establishing shot of the Zeppelin going away. You're just like, oh, plane. And then all of a sudden they run to the plane, and he's like, I didn't know you could fly. He goes, fly, yeah, land, no. And you're like, oh, fucking yes. He flew a plane in the last one. It's so fucking cool. And then they crash. And then that scene is like, then they crash, you know. Oh, and I like when he's like, were we hit, Dad? And he's like, yeah, son, they got us. Like,
that's so great. And it made me wonder too, there's got to be a mechanism on those real planes to stop that from happening, or else it would have happened all the time.
yeah, true. Yeah, very true. I never thought of that. And then they crash and they switch to the car. So it's one of those like, okay, plane to the car. Well, Zeppelin to the plane to the car. And it's at iconic thing that you just know if you know this movie. And also it might happen when people steal cars. I think that's your main shot of somebody putting on a hubcap or changing the tire and they just get it on and then the car drives away. But it's that guy going to put the hubcap on and all of a sudden, boom, and the car drives away. And you're like, oh, shit, so fucking badass. And then they drive through the tunnel. This is the part I don't care for. Spielberg loves it. That's why he put it in. They drive through the tunnel, the plane hits, the wings come off, and then the bad guy's like, sliding by them next to their car when the tunnel wasn't that big to begin with. Now he's sliding next to him, but Spielberg's like, I like how the guy kind of looks at him as he's driving by, like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
So, you know.
I love when they come out of the tunnel, though, and the bomber drops a bomb, and they go right into the crater and crash the car. Yeah. That was slick, man.
Yeah. I always love that part. It's just like it stops. Like, boom, everything stops right then. Oh, so cool. And then Indy saw, and then he does the thing with the birds. Which did you watch a making of where they had pigeons when they were trying to get and they were like, release the pigeons, and they wouldn't go, and then they tried doves, and then finally Spielberg's like, let's just film with a so and so Max camera, and we'll send it to Lucas, and he'll put the fucking shit in there. And you're like, okay. And then Indy, Saul, and Dad are looking for Brody. That's when they're up on the mountain. They're like, oh, he's in the belly of that steel beast. And then Indy getting on that horse from laying down, fucking baddest moment ever. Like, he just gets on and then it stands up. Oh, so fucking badass. And then all the tank stuff is great, like him, you know, fighting those guys, and there's 3 guys and he shoots them and they all fall, like that one bullet went through them all.
Yeah. That was obviously, you know, they had to like one up the truck chase scene in the first one.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that they really like accomplished it. Like I was like, wow, this is a great sequence.
And they had to one up the guys with the swords, you know, and him pulling the gun, shoot the guy, and then the other guys where he went for the gun, there's no gun, and then this one there's 3 guys and he just shoots them with one bullet and they all die. And then him hanging on that fucking barrel.
Hey, weren't you trying to figure that out? You were like, there's a movie where a guy shoots somebody with a gun and then they all fall.
I was going to ask you again. Thank you for asking me. Thank you for bringing it up. No, there's a movie where there's 2 guys. They're being attacked. And the guy goes, and they got 1 bullet. And he goes, damn it. Now I'm getting confused with Rambo 3. Rambo 3, he says, I guess surrounding him's out because it's just him and Krenna and all the Russian armies attacking.
Right.
But on this one, he said, you think we could get them to all stand in a line? That's what he says, because he's only got 1 bullet. And so I still don't know what it is. I'm going to look. My last choice is I looked up Deal of the Century. I watched that one with, Chevy Chase. My next one is Eddie Murphy in, what was that one? Him and Dudley Moore, where he's in the tank. He goes, I'll come bullet, it's a 38. I'll come bullets and blow the back of your goddamn head out.
I don't know what that is.
Eddie Murphy says that. Anyway, it's a movie called, Anyway, I'll correct it on the beginning of the show. Anyway, so I love when he's hanging on the barrel of that and they're going to run him into the mountain. And it's just such a cool scene, and his hat's down, and it's like, all the dirt and shit's going on him. And
that was Harrison Ford.
And and what's funny that on that making of that you probably watched the same thing I did was where there's just guys up above, like it's that movie magic of them just with shovels, like throwing dirt on him, just walking along while he's going.
But if you think about it, Harrison Ford is dangling between a cliff wall and a tank.
Yeah.
If somebody would have fucked up and hit the wrong lever, he would have got squished like a grape.
Yeah, exactly.
The man is a badass.
But yeah, that whole tank scene is good. It's like when he fights the guy flips over, gets ran over by the treads, and then also like him holding his dad, and his dad's like hitting all the treads, and them pushing his face down onto the treads. Yeah, so good. And what was funny about that was Lucas was like, I want a World War I tank in the movie. I don't know where, but I just want one. And Spielberg's like, okay, let me make a sequence. And he made the storyboards and was like, here we go.
There are so many stories like that where they're like, so like we thought it would be a good idea to have his dad in it. And it's like, what the fuck was the first script? Like,
Yeah.
What did you guys have in it if it didn't have any of those chase sequences or any of the dad stuff?
Had nuns and had the other archaeologists. Well, that's where he maybe when he fell in love with that female archaeologist, she was like, "I'm looking for the Holy Grail." But that's where what's sad is this movie is a good ending to the whole thing. You want more as they run off to the sunset.
Right.
But when you get more, and granted, it's like everybody says with, like Spielberg and Lucas have even said it, no matter what we did, we're fucked. No matter what George Lucas did to make a prequel, he's fucked. You can't redo Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. You can try, but I'm not going to be happy. That's why, like you and I have also talked about, Force Awakens is like, let's just take this New Hope, put it on here, and just recalibrate it and do that. And they're like, and it works. And you're like, I got everything that I wanted, all the old characters plus some new ones, full of action. I love it, you know.
But there's still a ton of people that are like, no, fuck that. That sucks.
And then there's, there's people, of course, who, but it's a thing with, so this movie is good. We're almost at the end. Is good. But then all of a sudden, like, then you do Crystal Skull. And you try to bring back Marion, which is fine. Okay, I love Marion. Bring her back. But then you bring back her dad, that was her dad, right? Or was that just a guy they knew? I forget.
I think that was, like, her husband.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because that was, because Mutt, it wasn't Mutt's dad. He was Mutt's dad. But Mutt, what a fucking... but yeah, it's but that's where you bring all this stuff, and then they go to a little Temple of Doom with it and make it like the ants crawling up to make a thing to get to her, and like they're going up her boots, they're eating the guy, they're killing people, they go on the truck like you and I said on Temple of Doom, jumping out of that plane. It's low enough. They weren't jumping from 20,000 feet. They were jumping from like 200 feet, and then they hit the ice, and then into the, just so cool. This one, they go, let's put them in a truck, and then the truck will be teetering over a waterfall. Then they'll go over a waterfall. Then they'll just float down the river. It'll be great. No, come on. It's like, so for Spielberg, I was watching just before we started. There happened to be, I know you hate Pluto TV. There happened to be 1941 playing on one Pluto channel, and Adventures of Tintin on the other. Adventures of Tintin has so much piled into it, which is action after action after action, where you're almost like, this is like too much. Like, like part of me always thinks, I love Spielberg. I have a bunch of Spielberg movies. Should I buy that? And then I go, no, it's not. It was directed by him, but it's too much, And that's
Spielberg really has, like, in the last few years, like, I didn't think, I loved Ready Player One, the book.
Yeah.
But then, and I was so excited for the movie, and I was like, Spielberg's the perfect person to do this, but I just feel like he doesn't have the love for it anymore,
I thought the movie was good where the book was better, but the movie was good where if you didn't read the book, it's a good movie.
Right.
But yeah, I was just watching a thing this morning. I know I'm out of your element now when I talk about a guy named Alfred Hitchcock, where they talked about he had a dark period. Toward the end, he was still trying to keep up with Hollywood. Like, he was doing all of his suspense movies in the 50s and 60s, and they were great. Then, after a certain point, James Bond started doing all the suspense espionage type stuff. He tried to do that, but more realistic, but didn't have the suspense and didn't have the character development in it. Right. And so then all of a sudden toward the end, they were like, those last 4 movies, there's one called Frenzy where a guy kills people with a necktie, but kills females. That was good, but all the others were just like, come on. Like, Hitchcock just almost gave up or, like, couldn't keep up with the times. These old directors.
That's how I feel about Spielberg. Yeah. And the fact that they're going to do another indie, I'm just like, it's not a good idea, as much as I want it, because of course you want more of your hero. Yeah. But with Crystal Skull, like, they hit all the right indie moments. Yeah. But I think I just don't want to see a senior citizen Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Like, he was already old in that movie, and now he's going to be even older. Like, I was even watching, because on YouTube I watch that making of. I could have pulled out my Blu-rays, but I don't know where they are. but I watched the making of on YouTube of Last Crusade, and then there was a thing of him talking about, he was on Conan talking about What Lies Beneath, and I'm like, oh, he still looks kind of young, but now he's older, and he's, he's not going to be able to, do all the fights and jump all around, and you almost do need somebody to hand off to, like Star Wars, like, okay, I'm not the Han Solo here's somebody else to be your, Poe or whatever.
Right.
But real quick to finish this out, I love that forced perspective bridge when they get there.
Such a cool.
The penitent man will pass, and then you're like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then he goes, penitent man kneels before God, and he kneels down, and the things go, and then he puts the thing to stop it. And that forced perspective bridge is something that you're just like, oh my God, he's got to have faith. And when he does it, you're like, and then the camera pans around to show right away, so you're not like, bullshit, fuck God.
Right.
So then you're like, oh, okay. And Spielberg was like, yeah, Lucasfilm just made that, and it was like so, brilliant. And then that guy, like the guy that played Walter Donovan was saying that the guy that played the Knight, he said he was so good. He said he just played it like you could say that line in so many ways that it wouldn't work. But he goes, it's funny when he says you've chosen poorly, and the guy's like, what? And then he goes, you've chosen wisely. Like, it's just so good, So.
It should have been John Cleese, though.
Yeah, that would have been good. But then definitely people would have been like, oh, it's the Black Knight is there to be like, just a flesh wound. And then the choose wisely, which I said. The death of Walter Donovan was a benchmark in digital effects, which was really, when he drinks the wrong.
That was scary as fuck, dude. That was like, the whole movie's like fine. The other two had horrific shit.
Yeah.
But like watching this at like 12 years old, I was like, oh, all right, we haven't seen anything horribly disgusting in this one. And then that fucking dude scared the shit out of me, dude. Like, I couldn't watch that until I was like 18.
Yeah. I saw it when I was 18. Yeah, in 89. Yeah. But yeah, I was watching that this time going, oh my God, that's pretty like, and he's holding on to her and she's screaming and he's just,
it's scary for sure.
And then when, she's reaching for it and he's like, honey, I can't hold, your glove is slipping, like, come on. And she really wants it. And then when Indy's there, and part of me always thought in a way, like, but I get it. That's why the movie's powerful, because Henry Jones Sr. should be like, no matter what, the cup is right there. I can see it. I just drank out of it. It's powerful. I went my whole life for this. Who cares if we leave here and it doesn't work? I need that because I've been chasing it for 60 years or 40 years.
Yeah.
And then he's just like, son, but that's such a cool moment when he's like, Indiana. And then Indiana like stops for a minute. And then he's like, let it go. And he's like, okay. And he gives him his other hand and he pulls him out. And it's so great because the whole time he's Junior. And he's like, stop calling me Junior. So good. And then your buddy, Pat Roach, you know about him being in this movie as well?
No, who's Pat Roach?
Pat Roach was a guy doubled as a Sherpa and a mechanic in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fought Indy.
Right, yeah.
And played a guard in Temple of Doom and made his final Indy appearance as Gestapo officer in Last Crusade. And then he died before Crystal Skull, but they were going to put him in that, but he died before that.
Oh, nice.
He died in 2005 or something. And Indiana Jones and Last Crusade grossed $5.6 million on Wednesday it opened, the second largest box office draw ever for a midweek opening before Memorial Day. The only thing that topped it was 1984's opening of Return of the Jedi, which pulled in $6.2 million. The film went on to gross over $197 million against a production budget of $48 million.
Well, you know what's crazy is I remember my dad taking me out of school, and we were going to go see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and we got to the theater, and it was fucking sold out on like 5 screens.
Oh.
And Ghostbusters 2 opened that Friday.
Oh,
and
shit.
We went and saw Ghostbusters 2, but we had to stand in line in the alley behind the theater for 2 hours to be able to get into Ghostbusters.
Oh, damn.
And it was the first time I ever remember being like, holy shit, like, movies are a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, man. Ghostbusters. I was working at the drive-in movie theater when Ghostbusters 2 came out and got to see it on like a sneak preview. And I liked it, but a lot of people are like, it wasn't what I wanted. But I love when they cover it in the ooze and they play the music and New York goes crazy and Statue of Liberty walks.
I love it more now than I did when I first saw it.
Well, and your kids might like it because my friend showed his 4-year-old. And he's like, she just wants to watch that over and over again. He's like, she loves it. And I'm like, really?
She's going to be messed up when she grows up.
Yeah.
My kids
She'll
are
be like
my kid's 7.
To life. Yeah.
Yeah. Nightmares forever. We're not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's insane in the membrane. Wow, that was an hour and a half of a show that we just did. Although we talked for a while before it, but anyway. Okay, I guess we can finish so you can go to bed or whatever.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having the idea.
It is always a pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope so, because sometimes I wonder. I'm supposed to do GoldenEye coming up next, but my friend Matt Rich said, I'll let you know, and he hasn't let me know yet, so I'm like, okay. And he hates Pierce Brosnan. He's like, I don't like him as Bond. I'm like, well, good then. We should do that because I'll fuck you up just like Brian was going to fuck you up. So, but yeah, it's great stuff.
Well, hey, if Matt Rich bails on you, like in most things in life, when Matt Rich fails, Jason Bromley steps in to fill the void. So,
all right. Yeah. And also what I forgot to tell everybody. So, Last Crusade is on Netflix. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is on Netflix, all the Monty Python stuff. And then what's the other one? The GoldenEye, all the Pierce Brosnan ones are on Netflix in case you want to do your homework
pulled
for
very
the next
soon,
show.
though.
Are they? Better hurry. I'm even wondering if the new one's going to be released in November. I have a feeling I'm going to do what I did last time, where I'm going to set this all up.
Yeah.
To fucking be done on November 18th. So I can go see the movie on the 20th, and all of a sudden it's going to be, no, it's pushed back till next year, or it's being released somewhere. And then it'll be like, motherfucker. So, I don't know. But I'm still going to go through with it. I kind of miss James Bond and all that stuff. So.
Well, I'm really sorry this pandemic is inconvenient for your podcast, but you know what?
Yeah. Oh, my God. The other day, I talked to a guy who... One of the guys, he's one of the supervisors or whatever. He works on the weekend, but he was like, yeah, there's only 0.004% of people that are really dying of COVID. It's not really. And I'm like, oh, that's weird because my wife's hospital is full of these COVID patients. Yeah. Well, you just got to look really deep on the internet for it, but you'll find. And I'm just like, bullshit.
Bottom line is, whether you believe it's a hoax or not, wear a mask and don't be an asshole.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just wear it for everybody else. Who cares what you believe?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Let me end my show because I just realized I didn't say my little thing that you always make fun of me. I came in your face. Just know that certain movies stick with you and stay in your head and heart forever. So join me next time when I put 2 movies. Although, next time it'll just be James Bond, so I should change this. But anyway. Next time I'm doing forget it. Anyway, my celluloid hearts get bigger and fuller with every movie I watch, and that's when you
go...
Like
your boner?
Yeah, that's when you go, like your dick in my mouth, and I'm like, yeah, my dick in your mouth. All right.
There's no cheese on my sandwich. Boom, we brought it back to the beginning.
That's right. Look at us. We're the Monty Python and podcasters.
Full circle jerk.
That's right.